we will go ahead and get started. We've got Kent Langley with us. We've got Erin Duda, Christina Korp, and today you are back with Amplifying Her Voice. This is our third global virtual summit, and we are recording all of our sessions from the beautiful island of Bermuda. And the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has been so generous to give us their offices so we can hold this whole global virtual summit here. So this is my second day, super hospitable, met all these amazing people who are interested in our work, helping us amplify your voices and more voices coming up this fall. So just a shout out to them to say thank you. And the conversation that we're having today is around space and blockchain for a better world. And just 4 months ago, Christina, you actually helped us get started with this whole space for a better world conversation. And as of today, we've had 2 full days of space conversations. Space Foundation has come forward, just had a whole bunch of panels investing in space, so on and so forth. And literally, you kicked us off. Erin, thank you for introducing us to Christina and Shelley Brunswick. And together, these 2 powerhouse ladies have helped me curate some incredible global sessions. And now so many of our young women and girls are tuning in, and it's just becoming something that they expect as opposed to something that they're, wow, we're talking about space. No, we're going to talk about space every single time we have this Amplifying Her Voice. So both of you, just know that we're going to create some impact and give young women and girls the avenue to learn where they can tune in, how they can participate, and most importantly, that they are part of this very important conversation about the future of our planet, future of our world, and everything that happens outside of it. So this is the point of this panel session today. And we're going to jump right in. And I'd love for you each to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and how you got yourself involved and what you hope to accomplish. Thank you. In the session.
Who do you want to start?
You start. I've got you. I'm just turning the silent mode on. You start, love.
Right. So, I am the resident space cadet. I go by astronaut wrangler. I managed Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin for 10 years and ran his education foundation for almost 5 years with his son, Andy Aldrin. So I am an accidental space person. I was an entertainment industry person who fell into the space world, which I think was a good thing to put eyes on space in a way that the space industry is kind of forgotten. They live in a bubble that, they know what's going on and they just assume the rest of the world understands that they're doing big world changing things. And I, as someone who came from the mainstream world into it, have tried to use my perspective as a media person to try to expose all the ways that space is doing really incredible things, not just for with hardware, but for people. And then also in ways that it's contributing to helping save the world. After the World Economic Forum, which is where I met Erin, I had spoken on some panels about women in leadership, space inspiration, that sort of thing. And I was really surprised at how little knowledge and awareness there is about how much space plays a part in helping to monitor climate change, that sort of thing. How clean energy, which is primarily solar panels, came from the space program, and people who have the resources, and even whole governments are building space farms, solar farms, and they don't even understand that came from the space program. And then often, people will say, what does space have to do with my life? And I will just hold up the cell phone and say, you got a cell phone? You're using satellites in orbit right now. But more than that, like the people who care about saving the world, there's a big disconnect in understanding that the reason we can see that the polar ice caps are melting, the reason we can see what's going on a global view is because of the satellites that are in orbit and the way that the space world cooperates with the environmental world, with NOAA and others and stuff. So I feel that besides the fact that I work with astronauts and I get to see their perspective of having gone to space and the overview effect, I've also got my own perspective as someone who fell into this world of seeing all the ways that we could use space for good, or at least let the powers that be who have the resources try to use space for good. So that's kind of become my new mission. That's what Space for a Better World is. More so almost like an advocacy type of organization or me as the spokesperson trying to raise my voice in a way that hopefully gets people's attention to look at space as the possible solution for saving the world.
Absolutely. So Ohad just sent us a text message. He's leaving now. He won't be able to make it, but beautiful introduction, Christina. And so many of us are so intrigued by how we can learn more about all these different initiatives, all these different programs. It's just the beginning. What a great time, like during the pandemic, to like recenter, reshift, rethink how we do things, not from just a local community standpoint, but also thinking about what's above and beyond, literally what's above and beyond. Kent, could you please tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with EXO and how you got involved?
Absolutely. So my name is Kent Langley. I am the co-founder of an organization called Open EXO, which was founded based on some of the principles and model of a book called Exponential Organizations that was written by my co-founder, Salim Ismail. And that book had in it a model that we've now constructed a community of over 8,000 people in it that is full of space nerds like me. And we are constantly seeking out and oftentimes shepherding the difficult conversations that are necessary to help communities and cities and companies and institutions integrate what we think of as exponential technologies into their day-to-day work in a way that doesn't trigger something we call the organizational immune system, which can simply slow down and retard progress in so many cases that could be done. And so the thing I love the most about it is that, I mean, now these days with so many things going on in that community, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not pleasantly surprised. And the other day, I needed to find a way to monitor some real estate, we'll call it, from satellites. And I reached into the community and I said, who can help me, monitor satellites? And I turned up a gentleman named Emiliano, who runs a company called Satellogic and is a member of our community. And so we've got all kinds of incredible things going on in that community that are space related. I've been a space nerd my entire life, and I'm trying to turn my 3 little sons all into space nerds too. So, because they're only 11, 8, and 5, so they might have a shot at going, which would be pretty fantastic if they want to. So those are the things I'm up to, and I really liked something you said there, Christina. The fact is that almost nobody considers the dramatic impact that space has on them almost every second of the day. I don't know too many people these days that can go from point A to point B without GPS, and they just take it for granted. So
that's me.
It's pretty fun. My wife, she won't even drive to the grocery store without GPS sometimes. I'm like, honey, it's right there. she likes to know, right? That she likes to see it moving on the map. It's great.
Well,
but anyway,
just to add to that, when I was in Nepal, and this is kind of what also helped drive my thought process about all this, I was around a lot of people who I was going outside of Kathmandu where there was no running water, hardly any paved roads, going and seeing this lifestyle and being a part of this event where they didn't have the things we have, and yet every one of those kids had a smartphone. And that just struck me as like such a crazy contrast in the world, but how space reaches every iota of life, of humans, at least human life all over the world.
Yeah, that's true. So that's just a little bit about me, what I'm up to. And the way I ended up here today is because I went to Singularity University, because I've been teaching there for a little over 8 years, a number of topics, one of them being blockchains and cryptocurrency. And so when you match that, and I've got a big list of things that we might talk about today. I don't know. I hope so. Some of them could be quite fun. So that's it. And because I had the good fortune to meet Anu a few weeks ago, it was fortuitous. It's been wonderful. So here I am.
I actually had a question about the project that Jackie's working on. Is that something we can talk about, or is that still quiet?
I think they're still a little bit in stealthy mode on that one. And I didn't clear with her to talk about that. And I have noticed sometimes they'd like to do that. But yeah, it's an amazing potential project, and it will be leveraging a number of things that are space related over time.
Okay. All right, great. We won't talk about it. Aaron, please tell us about your journey. You're a space cadet on many levels.
Steve Austin. That's all it is. I think, when I first came to the U.S., the first show I saw on TV was $6 Million Man. And I said, I want to be that guy, and I didn't want to be in the hospital, but later in life, I turned out to be that guy where they had to put me together. But it did cost more than $6 million to put me together. So it shows how times change and what can be done. But I think, look, I grew up in a family of aviators and engineers. And so it was kind of accessible to me, the notion of going to the outer limits. And as a young child, I always admired, space from an astronaut's point of view, because it was when they landed in the Indian Ocean, the capsule, we got to hear it on BBC in Calcutta, and it was a big moment of, I think, not just a self-identity in Indians because of the Indian Ocean, but also in our family because my father was somewhat involved in the aspiration of being part of that program, and then later coming to the U.S. and being part of the program. So I kind of grew up in that environment where it came kind of naturally. And what I really took away from that was having access to a lot of cool stuff before the normal consumer did, growing up in those military bases and so forth. And in doing that, it gave me early exposure to what was possible and how research and science worked. And I think the first time I really thought about how space affected us, aside from the commercial of Tang, on TV with orange juice and powdered, it was good for the astronauts, it was good for the kids, and it tasted good after all. But I think it was like looking at like Silverstone, like on our cooking pans, or Goodyear tires when I was racing. People always say it was like space-aged technology. And then, when I first got a chance to go to Queens, New York, by the old World's Fair and started to reflect on history and what was shown there, and then, in the other World's Fair and so forth, I realized how advanced we are as nations. And we just don't know how to, commercialize it in the context where we really think about the benefits of the inventions and the discoveries that we make. And in the space program and, defense and other American institutions, at the end of the day, they have to give them the inventions back to the civilians because our tax dollars at work, outside of things that we don't know about, like black ops type stuff. But, and so there's always been a commercial aspect of doing that. And I think, Kent, as you think through Singularity, you'll think about way back when with Peter and Harry and others, think about X Prize with, the notion of a challenge and how it all started, right? So I grew up with those brat packs and kind of, grew up to the journey that you've taken later in life. And so I was always around it in a commercial context of what could be possible. And I think when the X Prize with Branson and Burt Rutan and Paul Allen and others came together, it enlightened me to say that, even though I couldn't be an Air Force pilot and continue on a program that I thought would lead me to space eventually, I felt it could be done again all over. I got re-inspired, and so over the years, what I've tried to do is I try to harvest and take that technologies that came out of those programs and try to see how it can be applied towards everyday life. Whether it's water purification, whether it's looking at solar and next generation power sources, whether it's, even looking at our diet and the next generation food. And it was hard for me not to be in those topics and not be around people, because if you know those folks like Barney Peltz and others who've got an early start trying to convince me that I should go and harvest asteroids like 15 years ago and put real money and real experiments in place, right? But at the same time, I said, while we're worried about climate and our planet and, what we have wars and other things about, property and coming back down to the people and centering around that, there's a lot of stuff that lives in our own grounds that we don't have to pull out and apply in a different way. So we don't have to chase asteroids to replace those minerals and other things that make our planet a less attractive place for us. So we have to create these other missions, So I kind of hunker down on the planet level, starting with the people. So most of the things that I think about investing in space is not directly in space, is things that we found and discovered that can be applied to make the world a better place. That's what I'm working on.
Beautiful. And I want to shift the conversation from that, like investing in planet, to tokenizing space. There's a lot of people that are interested in being a part of the solution. And one of the conversations we had yesterday that sparked out of our conversation, the very, very first time you had your Space for a Better World, Christina, was the Project Artemis. And I was intrigued. And I said, next time we're going to talk about Project Artemis and investing in space. And this time we had a full session on Project Artemis. And the thing is, there's a large number of women and girls that would love to see a woman on the moon. But how do we do that? It's going to require financing. It's going to require media. It's going to require momentum, in terms of advocacy and so on and so forth. How do we do that? And so the thought was, would there be a way to tokenize maybe even this project, possibly even this project? So just thoughts on how building engagement, from a blockchain standpoint. There may be other projects, right? Like space exploration and things like that. Have you come across any initiatives on the blockchain that have been funded through crypto or through blockchain initiatives from your standpoint? Have you seen anything on your radar?
I've been talking to some people about it. I'm in a family office group where primarily it's standard investing, but obviously if you're involved in the space world or somehow, some way, I don't think you can avoid knowing about blockchain because pretty much everyone who's involved in space activities is pretty aware has been of cryptocurrency for a really, really long time. And obviously if you're into space, then you're following Elon Musk, who really moves the meter constantly.
Well, too much sometimes.
Yeah, for good or for bad. So, I mean, clearly people like him and other people who are around him or paying attention to space are very involved in that. And I've heard lots of really futuristic type talk about when we go back to the moon. Obviously, Artemis, for those who don't know, is NASA's missions to take people back to the surface of the moon. And they've been signing the Artemis Accords with a bunch of nations all over the world. Brazil just signed it. So I think there are 8 countries, and I think that somebody else is going to sign it pretty soon. Another country is going to. And the idea about going back to the moon is really about mining the ice to have water and to create rocket fuel and turn the moon into a fuel depot for longer duration space flight. The other thing I've heard, though, relating to crypto and blockchain and all of that is that a lot of people are really, really judgmental, maybe rightfully so, about the amount of computing power that crypto takes and in order to operate on Earth, and the amount of energy that's expended. So people in the space world have been talking for a little while now about putting the servers on the moon. And so in order to actually just make use of solar energy and having it off world, and then basically having it in another secure place. So it sounds futuristic, but people in the space world are talking seriously about this. And in the meantime, I'm talking to a bunch of people about trying to create or work on a space impact fund that uses space technology to make life better for people on Earth in places that they don't have an infrastructure already, and using blockchain and cryptocurrency to help fund that. That is something that I'm in the middle of right now. It's just in the formation stages. So
it's amazing. So this is again like the future. It's like deep tech that goes like cross disciplinary deep tech is very interesting. You've got space tech, you've got fintech, you've got blockchain, you've got AI. It's all converging. And again, it's at the end of the day, as Aaron said, it's people, planet, and this incredible potential that we have once we all come together. And again, it's a unifier. And that's the beauty of this time, is for all of us to be thinking through how we can engage. And for those people who can't engage, how do we get them on board as fast as possible so they can be part of the solution too? Because everyone shares this planet. I think everyone realizes we're one humanity at the end of the day. And if we can start to engage these people, how much faster can we get to our end goal? So go ahead.
Anu, Ken, if I may, what Christina just said is very fascinating. Christina, I think you're the first person in the space world I heard this from, maybe at least from my ears. What's really changed is really how money gets deployed for innovation. If you think about how the space race started and why it was and how it unified at least America, the rest of the world around the ambition. It was something that was remarkable, that centered the whole world into something that was people could really participate and dream about. And then the monies came from people who, big countries that had the money to afford to take on those missions. And obviously the US, we were in a very prime spot in that phase. But the way how money, flew into, continuing the innovation, it was very much dependent on government and large institutions that, created economy out of it. So it became more and more difficult for inventors and entrepreneurs to engage in that money pool, unless they went into defense contracts or subcontracts or academia and so forth. So there was a very defined ecosystem instead of barriers to entry, and even if you wanted to be a astronaut or even go in as an engineer, it was pretty well said. You had to do certain things or career path that you can go on, and hopefully you'll get there. I think what's changed over time, especially now that we talk about blockchain and crypto and others, the notion of money has changed and the notion of barriers have changed to use that money. And the money doesn't have to be exact. It has to be a perception of what the value of that money is, that in a moment in time gives you the currency to buy a ticket to the moon or back, okay? And there's a new kind of money that is spent in a very different way, where it's not a long-term yield project of 30 years mission. There's much more of a compression where the sciences and the life cycles of sciences are starting to match the equilibrium state of where money is being stratified around the world. And then the people component of this now, they have a lower barrier to entry because the technology has caught up. I mean, for instance, I heard Brian say to me yesterday, there was 9 billion connections on the internet yesterday. That's more than almost the number of people that live in this world, right? Imagine saying that number even 10 years ago. Our world has gone from 2-dimension, 3-dimension to some sort of a network to hyper networks now, and it's just growing very fast electronically. And so the notion of money, the notion of the innovation cycle, the notion of expectations, they're all getting compressed, but it's also becoming affordable, for the normal consumer to participate in these big, large missions. So I think, Christina, going back to your point, I think we actually do have a way now we can engage the populace in investing in these programs and also benefiting from it when the successes occur in a commercial context, which I don't think we'd had until we put things like the X Prize and others, to kind of still philanthropy, quasi-philanthropy, very few people, very committed for a long time. But I think we can turn that to many, many, many people now in a shorter commitment to have a great time much sooner.
Kent, you are looking deep in thought, and I know you wanted to say something before, and I know this has taken you into a whole nother realm. So,
no, it's wonderful. I have so many things I want to say to this, so I'm going to try to compartmentalize it. But first of all, blockchains and space, and let's think about really fundamentally what is a blockchain. It's a ledger, right? It's a store of data, but it operates in a really special and unique way due to a particular innovation that was made around consensus by many people, but Satoshi kind of gets the credit for this. So you can think of a blockchain as a distributed database that's eventually consistent for whatever transactional information you put on it. So when you're thinking about building interplanetary networks, and let's just talk about an easy one from here to the moon and back, and you want to do something like have a store of some particular form of data for sure available all the time, because life and death is what's at stake. You want to do that with a blockchain and perhaps attach a technology like IPFS, which is a not a blockchain, but a very complementary technology. IPFS even stands for Interplanetary File System. So you really want to dig into these things and understand how blockchains and IPFS, which are the backbones of what is really Web3. I'm not talking about what necessarily the media reports as Web3, but I'm talking about what really Web3, the future of the internet and the World Wide Web look like, are going to almost certainly be built on those technologies or variations of them. So servers on the moon, yes, absolutely. Why in the context of blockchain, crypto, and the apologies to my co-panelists, but the deep imperceptions about the energy utilization for the value it creates of, say, the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. It does use a lot of energy, right? There's no question about it, but look what it also provides in terms of its capability. You have to weigh it on balance, and most of what gets written does not do that. However, there is newer technology that many blockchains are using called proof of stake that uses only a minute fraction of the energy to perform the same consensus function. That is that key innovation of blockchains that allows so many new types of distributed applications to function in a resilient and really permanent way. So there is no way that blockchain is not in the future space, because it's simply better at doing certain types of things than other things before it. Right next to those crypto mining servers that will end up on the moon, because it's going to be the most economically viable way to run them, because it's nice and cold there and you have unlimited energy coming from the sun. That's better than any hydroelectric dam, which is what attracts crypto mining these days. And yes, we will still need proof of work pretty much indefinitely, even though proof of stake exists. We're going to be able to use tools like IPFS and related things like networks like Filecoin, which is cryptocurrency, to provide immutable, distributed, effectively indestructible repositories of all human knowledge. So when I was saying earlier, I'd like to have some certain data available if I'm on the moon and my life depends on it. Why not just have it all? Right? You can do that now, right? The technology already exists. It's just not, as they often say, evenly distributed. And then Aaron, crypto funding starships, one of the notes I made earlier was the thing that disappoints me right now about Elon Musk is not that he won't accept crypto for a Tesla. I don't care. I mean, that's neat. I want him to take Bitcoin or Doge, since he loves it so much, for a seat on Starship right next to him when he takes off the first time he goes. That will fund some space travel, you see. And that's a way to make utility for Bitcoin space travel. That's really cool, right? Utility equaling what people can use crypto for. So these are just some of the things. I mean, there's a much longer list that go through my mind as to how we should be applying blockchain technology in the context of space travel, space exploration, and colonization over time. For sure, the IPFS network is going to be in orbit soon. It's a small technicality to get there. And SpaceX Falcon 9 reusability has driven the price down far enough that this just makes sense. If it hasn't happened already and we just don't know, I don't know. Gosh, there's so much. I can't. That's why I thought this was such an interesting panel that you put together, Anu, because, I mean, what is there not to talk about in terms of blockchain in space?
Oh,
No, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can't see any of you. So if you have tabs open, please close all your tabs. If you're on Chrome, that's the best browser that Hopin works on. We're having a technical challenge, no video for any of you, so I can't see anything.
Interesting. I can still see all of you.
I see everybody. Okay. Yeah. Do you want us to come back? You want me to come back in, Anu? Would that help?
Yes. Even come back, and then I'll get you. I can see you. And Christina, okay. Aaron, if you want to, you're on the same situation. If you want to come, if you all want to come back in like, 10 seconds, and I'll let you all in.
All right. No
Sorry. Okay, I can see you now. Fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, I refreshed before, so okay. I could see everybody. I just didn't think you could see me. Okay.
I couldn't see anyone, so I didn't know who was saying what, who wanted to say what. Okay, we will have the other two come back in just a sec.
I just realized where I remember Kent from. When I saw him yesterday, I'm like, I know him from someplace.
Or was it X Prize?
Yeah, when he first started out there, and at Singularity, that's when I met him.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
This is the group that I did a town hall with a couple weeks ago, and we're in the process of doing a podcast with them. So it's a lot of overlap, a lot of synergies. Here's Christina, and we will get started as soon as Kent comes back. Waiting for Kent. He'll be back in any second now. You all went blank for a second, Christina, so thank you for this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I saw you put that note in there, but we were still see
Yeah.
everybody.
Everything was
Aaron-
fine to me. Yeah.
Aaron, you were saying before I asked everyone to leave. Do you remember your thought?
No, I was just thinking about this. Ken, I agree with you around the opportunities in space and blockchain and so forth. And when I was at Cisco, we put the first IP router in space about 16 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. And when we look at telecommunications and when we look at even in maritime, just to use that as an analog, we've been doing international trade and mission critical stuff in banking and military and others, cross borders. And it's just the distance with space that's different there. So yeah, blockchain and those things have a role in the new infrastructure, but I still haven't found the cost benefits to say why or why not. If I had to optimize around getting there first, right? That wouldn't be a primary priority for me to say, let's get infrastructure there so I can get my refueling station moving and, get the supply chain in place. But where I do see things in blockchain and that kind of infrastructure is exactly what I think one of you pointed to earlier is that we can now, because of communications costs are at scale and cheaper and connectivity, like what the internet, didn't give us 30 years ago, but gives us now, we kind of expect it as a utility. I think in the space side, if we look really hard, we'll see the economics are still there, okay, where it could be affordable to the average person on the street. We just haven't really sized that marketplace. And it's too bad Ohad couldn't join us because he came from the satellite world where his last company he created was actually using lasers to, point at low orbital satellites to inject storage space, to create data centers that way on demand, right? So one can imagine where you can actually, distribute in a DeFi environment, distributed finance environment, the notion of mining that gets done, not just for energy reasons, for efficacy and efficiency and correctness, anywhere in the world, 1 or 2 hops away, okay? And in the new set of economics. So that's something to write home about. But blockchain there is a very low part of the infrastructure, but a very integral part, on that telemetry to make sure it's accurate, it's the right information and so forth. Because that in itself, in a consumer orientation may not be mission critical, but we learned through the pandemic, you get one brownout or blackout, or if your cell phone goes down or your kids don't have Wi-Fi, it becomes mission critical these days, right? So there's a whole economics that's designed around that. I think we need to kind of regraph again. You will find there's tremendous opportunities, just little simple things, just taking things that are on the ground or on our air, bouncing it into space and bouncing back will create a much better set of solutions that we can economically and viably afford today. So that's why I usually don't talk about blockchain and crypto and IoT and things like that, because I think the buzzword bingo has to stop at some point, and we have to. And I think, Christina, you got me to think about this about 6, 7, 9 months ago. It's not about the impact. It's how do we make it better than what it is, and what does better really mean, and what are the metrics by which we can invest in that better, and really have some proof points to show it is better. And that's where I think I pick it up at the capital side of the equation. Are we creating the right money to invest in the right places where we can demonstrate that impact around scale and pace? And what are the inventions or the technologies, whether it's in space, water, or land? But I tend to think most of our money has always gone towards space. But hopefully, we haven't slowed down that much there, where at least the innovations are not that far away from us. It can still be usable. That's my worry.
Well, what has happened since you and I first started talking about that is I have met, you may have seen on my LinkedIn, and some people have seen that I started posting about what does space have to do with my life. And I started showing
that's awesome.
Everyday technologies. So for instance, the infrared thermometers that we've had to use during the pandemic, so we could take people's temperature without touching anything. And that is a direct NASA technology that came out of measuring the heat between planets. That's just something right away. Memory foam came from the space program. The Nike sole of the shoe is made out of the material that they invented to make space helmets lighter and more durable. Things like that. And when I started posting that, people were like, wow, I had no idea, And even on the broader scale, going back to solar panels, it's amazing how people don't connect the dots that solar panels were created, 60 years ago, and to power spacecraft and satellites in orbit. And the only reason it's becoming more mainstream now is because it is becoming more affordable and more people are using it. The thing I was going to say is that after I posted all of that stuff, and I was getting some people saying, wow, that's amazing, I didn't know that. There's a woman who reached out to me who said, that's my job. My job is to take NASA patents and basically help companies and startups license them for commercial use. And so there are literally, I think she said, 14,000 patents sitting there with new technologies that are just sitting there. And that's a resource that is open to anyone to go and look and see. It requires, obviously, people understanding what they can do with it and how it can be used and all of that. But I said, well, just think, though, if we could somehow create a process together that gives investors a way to invest in it, do some good with some of these new inventions that haven't been developed yet. They could be good business that also do good for people. That's what I'm hoping that.
That's so good to hear, because that's really how, if we remember history on the software side, things came out of DoD and DARPA the same way, to a Simtel 20 site at White Sands Missile Range, which is the first downloadable open software connection. And it was a relationship with Georgia Tech called Cosmic. That's where NASA and DoD outletted a lot of that early AI and language code, which became great companies, because they would either, people like myself would get access through universities to do our studies. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you build something that looks like Box today, but it was called FTP 30 years ago, right? But it came out of those kind of programs where we were building the internet, NASA, DoD, DARPA, and that by law, you had to, at some point, when you got done with your secret stuff, you had to give it back to the universities and the people. But that commercialization process outside of, very limited people, not too many people knew about it. Hence the open software movement and GNU and others that came off from it. Okay. But as a whole, in the engineering, science, and design world, it didn't exist. So if NASA has something like that with patents, I think it's great, because that's the first thing we should do, is put it out there and say, hey, look, before Aaron, your son has a great idea about what to do in space, you should probably take a look at that patent, database there, before.
Yeah, that's what we're kind of hoping.
And that could be monetized.
That's where
we did it at IBM and other places.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to, make people think too, is like, we're not asking you just to invest out of the goodness of your heart. There is an opportunity here to create new technologies or new, things that come out of those technologies that you could make money on, that you could build.
There's a commercial context for it.
There's a commercial context for it, but you could also, if you have the resources, try to do something. Like, I would really like to create a test bed somewhere with all space technologies to basically show how space can make life better for people on the planet too. And I think that's already happening, but not in a focused way that it's about trying to make life better for people. It's just a commercial way that we benefit from. Sorry, my son is coming to try to join us.
Well, an interesting question would be, is can you take a newer organizational structure, like say a public benefit corporation, which has a balance between the for-profit and the benefit side, if the operational agreement and bylaws are set correctly, and apply the notion of technology transfer from say 14,000 NASA patents, and then create a legal structure that would make this viable. And if you do combine that with some of the new crypto and blockchain-based, crypto not being the only thing, why not? And I am aware of a gentleman, and I'm blanking on his name right now, in Canada, who has built a process for technology transfer which appears to be superior to almost any that I've heard of coming before. So I'll have to go back and check my notes on what that is. And Christina or Aaron, I'm happy to share if I can remember what that is and connect some dots, because we were looking to apply that technology at Stanford, or that process. I think it processes technology anyway, but apply that process at Stanford for a particular reason.
You know what it does is it unlocks the value to a commercial context, where in the old days, the only opportunity as an entrepreneur I would have if I had access to that would be go through like a SBIR program, which is a small business innovation research program. And then they have certain gates, 50,000, 500,000 to a commercial partner. Or I would have to go for a government contract. As a little guy, I couldn't.
Very
unless
hard.
I had some small business or minority-oriented vehicle, right? Which I probably could have as who I am, but in general, it was limited again to a section of the populace. And the other thing would be a contractor to what I would call the traditional, beltway bandits for the industrial machine. Yeah, and so today, if you can create a clearinghouse and put a fund behind it, you can spawn off amazing new companies from that. And we proved that with Bell Laboratories. If you remember Bell Laboratories, when they became Lucent, their portfolio became part of internal ventures, Lucent Internal Ventures, which spun out to Lucent Ventures. And that venturing component became a portfolio of patents where people like Philips Electronics, Nortel, and others created a $1 billion fund. And a lot of great things came out during the internet days. One specifically was around, streaming video software and redesigning codecs a different way, which basically was an algorithm to filter and to control how we see this video on the screen today. But imagine 20 years ago, it was very hard to do on a small modem, right? But, it came out of something like that with somebody who had a belief. Otherwise, that would have just sat on the shelf.
Well, that's what became MPEG, wasn't it, Aaron?
It was before MPEG, actually.
Before MPEG, okay.
Before MPEG, yeah. It became, it'll come to me. I remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I remember the name of the people before the name of the project sometimes. But what happened is that, I think we have those assets today that we can create monetization around. And this is why, like with Anu and some other folks, we've been talking about, regenerative real estate and regenerative design, environmentally, to start to think about, not what that is, but to attack a different part of the ecosystem, which is industrial, materials, right? If you attack that supply chain and say, hey, look, if you change your supply chain, you can get better yield on that side. But the guys who are trying to build the regenerative stuff don't really have enough economics. They're just going from proof point to proof point, right? So go downstream. And then you have an ESG and everything else today that's kind of putting a mandate where you have to be greener without greenwashing, right? So I think all the control vectors are in place that if one were to even take this conversation and create a fund around the NASA patents, boy, that has value today, right? There you go. We got a company in the making.
How many patents would you need to? I mean, how many clearances would you need to go through to get?
You don't. And when it's in that,
you need
level,
somebody to guide you on the process. I mean, so that's what I am working with this woman who basically said, that's what I do. I guide people through the process and explain and teach them how to basically license the technology and the patents, and then guide them through, here's how you can turn it into a commercial product. So she's left NASA now, and we're partnering together with a couple of other people who are very like-minded and and forward thinking and want to do good in the world. And we're in the formation stages of trying to do that, to guide people through the process, because NASA's had this site for a while. This is not brand new, and yet nobody knows about it. And even if you know about it and you go to the site, you might think, oh, this is cool, but how do you know what you're looking for? So that's another thing that we're trying to create, is like explain, okay, if you want to solve this issue, here are some patents that are a good avenue to that. That's one thing that we've been thinking about, is trying to make that process a little bit easier. Because who has the time to sit there and scroll through 14,000 patents?
Well, there's the only.
I mean, they are categorized.
Wow.
But still, if you click in, then you got to go in and then you got to do a search. And even the woman from NASA acknowledged that without someone like her who knows the whole back end of it, it is overwhelming. The amount of stuff that's there.
A lot of those systems were designed that way for a reason, because they were compartmentalized to begin with, and you had these special librarians who had top secret clearance to make sure that it was compartmentalized, right? So, but Anu, to answer your question, most of these things are declassified in the public domain. Okay, the words are called public domain. When it gets into there, then it's open. But I think there's a good way where we did this many years ago with Carnegie Mellon on the robotics and AI side, where you take some of these software and start to teach in the graduate level and create the skill, where hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into the research and development on these things, but people tend to not know about it, and they replicate PhDs around it, and they get out of the long process and they realize it's been there for 15, 20 years on the shelf, right? Yeah. So I think the other side of the equation, and this is one of the things that we also paid attention to as the world gets digitized around digital assets, the entrepreneur and the inventor's point of view is that even if you go through that, you still don't have protection. That's your labor and that's your work. Okay. You don't have protection now. If you think that website is bad, go to the World Patent website or the USPTO website and try to find something. So,
one interesting thing I was going to tell you that she told us about recently, which I thought was good, which was actually that some of the inventors that actually helped develop it are going to get royalties now.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to actually create the sovereign protection. From Bermuda, from that patent or trademark, things like that, right? Because that's the only way we can get around, the adjudication and the reciprocation. So if I'm a patent holder in the U.S., I have to refile around the world, right? And if I'm a patent holder from Bermuda, which is where we're building all of this global GDP stuff from, I will not have reciprocation from the UK or the US. So it's little things like that.
Oh, look at Kent getting all. Yeah, that's the site.
Is that the site? Because I was like, is this the site? Because it looks really cool. So I just.
What's it called?
NASA patent portfolio.
I'll post the link in the chat. Anu, you are officially relaunching the NASA patent portfolio site here at your conference, and I'm going to play with this a little bit because there's another friend of mine who's created it's sort of an AI-driven clustering technology. And if you could pair something like that with, say, a GPT-3 trained language model, which we don't need to get GPT-3 from Google anymore because OpenAI, because now we have a GPT Neo, which is the open source version of that. If we were to train a language model on the patent portfolio and pair it with a clustering technology, then you would actually have a way to leverage this resource that you could speak to it in natural language, and it would effectively write you a paper. And as long as it preserved the footnotes of where it picked up what it's teaching you, then it would actually point you to the patents. I literally just made that up, but I think it would work.
No, I mean, listen, I was tracking you. Can't make it work that way. We actually have a piece of technology that's in Plato that does that exactly today.
Cool.
And so that's why, and we have 5 major inventors working with us, and I spent 9 months with the Bermuda government around their sovereign IP laws to basically accommodate things like this, where we've contributed. Just one of the inventors, Scott, has 280 patents around digital watermarking that he created with Sony that is to go in our Walkmans and our Sony Discmans and so forth. So, on the other side of the equation, we have, my other partner, David Holtzman, who's, in privacy and crypto and was a co-founder of Network Solutions. And So when you look at our patents and just by itself and what, inventors have to and entrepreneurs have to pay just to protect themselves, and then you look at the IBMs in the world and Googles of the world who compete on patents and what they pay just to, pay outside attorneys just to organize that database, not even do anything with it. There's an economic system there that not just around the management of that asset, but really how can we bring that asset into commercial context so we can get better leverage around those space investments that we've already made, that people are going to kind of reinvent those things all over again. And I see that all over. So the issue really becomes is information flow.
There's a lot of fluff around the
treasures.
NFT. I'm sorry, Aaron.
Go ahead.
I thought that was an opening. There's a lot of fluff around the NFT space, non-fungible tokens. However, it occurs to me that these patents could easily be republished as NFTs. We just saw Tim Berners-Lee, for example, sell the original code as an NFT with a video playthrough of the code being typed. Not necessarily him typing it. I don't know that for sure, but the point was that actually just happened, and we're going to see a lot of that sort of stuff. So, and the reason to do that and tie it back to this panel as well is because NFTs are on blockchains, and they typically reference data sources on technologies like IPFS, which are the things we were talking about earlier, and that's Web3. So it's really that marriage of Web3 with something as
comes out to the other P that
Aaron, I'm going to jump in. Yeah. We've got 5 minutes left before I have to leave the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. This discussion that we're having here today, it's also building on another conversation that we had earlier this afternoon on investing in space. And what we came to the conclusion is that we need a roundtable specifically for investing in space at the next Amplifying Her Voice. So
cool.
There were 2 women yesterday that said, look, I've got space ventures. I want to get funded. 2 of the investors that were on my panel today said, I can't find any women-led ventures. And I was like, you know what? We all need to get in a room. And now we have this other idea that you're talking about, Christina, which is fantastic. And we've got some people that are saying, I'm actually actively looking for space investment. So I think where we stop now, if it's okay with everybody, it's 555. This is my number. This is my magic number, Aaron. As you know, it's 555. I'm announcing it right now. The next Amplifying Her Voice, we will have an investing in space roundtable. It's going to happen.
And I'll have a lot more information probably about what we're trying to do by then too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll tell everybody watching right now, please bring your checkbooks. And we
you need your digital device, right, for digital currency.
Literally, yeah. Maybe our wallet will be ready then too. But we are building a website, and all of our content next time is tokenized. So for those people watching, once you engage, when you listen to the podcast that we're going to be creating, they're all going to be you're going to be rewarded with tokens and things like that. So we're gonna shift this whole game next time we all convene in the fall. Super grateful for everyone that was with us today. If you have one final sentence that you want to share for our listeners today around space and blockchain, this is it. And then I'm going to leave in 4 minutes. We're going to leave in 4 minutes. Jonathan, go ahead. Christina.
Well, my one sentence is, I believe that space technology research and development are the key to saving the planet and solving the sustainable development goals.
Okay, awesome. And people can engage by checking out Space for a Better World.
Or purposeentertainment.com is my company, or you can follow me on social media. Martina's on here, and she follows me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. All the spaces except for TikTok. I'm not on there.
Awesome. Kent, you next, and then Aaron.
This is moving very, very, very fast. Get off your ass. Don't wait. Just get going.
Amen, brother. And we will follow up next week. We're moving at light speed with you. So look forward to this journey. Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, it's very simply put. I mean, just keep on doing what you're doing until somebody says it's not useful, okay? Because I just can't figure out somebody who's saying that it's not useful what we're doing, right? Because it is useful, and let's just keep an eye towards the people too, okay? That's what always keeps me centered.
Amen. So thank you everyone for joining us. Next time, we're going to invite those people for a very special Investing in Space Roundtable. We're going to record this meeting for those people that are interested. And again, Christina, like you and I will talk again soon and see, what we can do. And Kent, thank you. We'll talk next week. And Aaron,
I love your fireworks. They're awesome.
Awesome.
All right.
You got to teach me how to do that.
Yeah.
I will. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.